Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for the upcoming Destiny Order, NA Edition. This arrives with FGO's 8th anniversary alongside Ash the Savior, and for the not-so-low price of 30 paid quartz, you're guaranteed to get one of 9 selected servants. But you have to pick one from each of the standard 7 classes, plus 2 groups of extra class servants. Obviously, if you're going after a 120 full append arrangement on your niche waifu, very little is going to dissuade you from fishing, but it's still worth knowing your options. Now, unfortunately, I was a bit slow on the draw when it came to making this video, and Plushie Mistress beat me to it. I'll be covering 2 different breeds of servant in this video, and for one of them, you're realistically going to be seeing a fair bit of overlap between our picks. Those would be the value picks, or as I like to call them, the showers. These are servants who get a huge amount of value going from NP 0 to NP 1, so your first copy is, in all likelihood, your most important copy. Generally, these are supports or attackers that don't necessarily need NP levels to do work. I call them showers to contrast them with the growers. These are servants who scale well off additional NP levels, so if you already have copies or plan to go deep on a grower, there is a point at which it's worth ditching one of the lower priority showers to gain depth on a powerful grower. There are also a few abnormal cases that don't fit neatly into either box, but have particular uses that are worth taking note of. I'll point those out as we go along. So with that said, let's make some enemies. First up are the Sabers. The shower here is Nero Bride, an old-school charge/refund support who generally fell out of favor as card-type specific chargers and more specialized teams entered the picture. Recently though, she showed up as one of the better supports for the Grand Saber duel, where you're locked into a Saber monotype team. If you're a very new player and just trying to suck up as many charge supports as possible, putting Bride in this slot isn't the worst idea in the world. The growers, however, are much more tempting in my book. Saber Medusa is a single target attacker with an anti-buff and 50% battery among other things. She's one of the best attackers for that Grand Saber duel I mentioned, and her party buffs make her a useful piece in 90++ team compositions. Benny Enma gets a buff next year that puts her in a similar position. She has a combined 50% in batteries, 20% of which splashes onto her teammates alongside an attack buff and purge resist effect. Her anti-buff package makes her another tempting attacker for Grand Saber shenanigans. Last up is Musashi, who does a shitload of damage at the cost of not having any kind of battery. If you can get a hold of her face cards, you can write off the properties of her hit count doubling effect to generate enough resources to keep the pain train going. While you could argue for her as a shower, I'm of the opinion that Musashi wants NP levels to cash in all the charge she generates from 5th Force. And unlike, say, 1st Asan, she doesn't have a stable enough skill set to operate on its power alone. The archers are a strange bunch, so your personal priorities are going to dictate your choice far more than meta considerations in all likelihood. Among the showers, Super Orion mostly relies on his crits, so you have the option of operating him as a 1 NP level wonder. If you're specifically headhunting Ash the Savior, who you tragically cannot pick on the Destiny Order, Takatsuki Shinsaku gives cooldown reduction and overcharge, which are both things Ash really likes, especially before she gets access to the cooldown reduction append. For growers, it's largely a matter of which servants you already have. But if you're in a position of choosing, Gilgamesh, Durga, and Squirturia are options I find appealing. The first 2 have useful anti-buffs. Gilgamesh's applies to the overwhelming majority of servants in the game, while Durga can arts loop and is, at equivalent NP levels, a better Jarcher. Squirturia lacks an anti-buff, but has a fundamentally busted hit count that lets her hard loop with relative ease, despite being a single target attacker. Unfortunately for those of you in the market for an archer, one of the best AoE archers is actually a Berserker, but we'll get to Kengo battles down the line. There aren't many 1-level wonders among the Lancers, so recommending a value pick is a bit of a hard proposition. But taking a crack at it, I think Bhima actually fits the bill. He's not a supporter, and while his flashiest gimmick calls for a high NP level, you may recall that he actually has an extremely powerful crit kit. This is something he can use even at NP 1. I have a servant guide on him if you'd like to know more. The growers have quite a few more options. In order of importance, I'd go with Melusine for her threat both as a single target arts attacker and an AoE buster farmer, the latter thanks to a one-time 100% battery. Then Skahak, though there is an argument for doing it the other way around. Shisho has a 100% 3-turn power mod against divine enemies, which is a comically high amount. Grand Servant duels, for example, have heavily emphasized anti-buffs like these over neutral damage. So while this is pure speculation on my part, I suspect that the Grand Lancer duel is going to test for Skahak over Melusine. Then I'd consider the pure AoEs. Lartoria gets an upgrade to buff roundtable servants, including herself, and she has a single turn power mod against chaotic and evil enemies. Ereshkigal goes for the anti-earth niche instead, but generally does less neutral NP damage. Both have the issue of being dependent on single turn steroids, which opens them up to having a weak turn in a 3 NP cycle. In the rider department, Rhinus is the main shower due to her being a 50% charger. She's not meta, but supplementary chargers are always nice to have. That and she can nullify her team's defensive class disadvantage, reducing incoming damage to neutral values. That's particularly nice against Berserker's super bosses. If you already have her, then I'd put Constantine the 11th in a distant second place. Surprising, right? Well, all those trash tier Trom servants I talk shit about are due to get buffed next year, and his awful noble Phantasm gets a major upgrade. Now his Buster buff spreads to his entire team, it gains an NP damage buff component, and its single hit invulnerability lingers for 3 turns instead of fizzling out after 1. While his skills remain unchanged and therefore fairly flawed, he actually has potential use cases now. It's harder to pick a grower. None of the currently restricted 5-star riders are particularly game-breaking in my book, so it really comes down to which one you already have at a high NP level. If you already have some Bakkins, Bakkin ain't bad. If you have Da Vinci, her damage ain't great, but her refund consistency makes her really good at grinding abnormal quantities of low-health meat. And if you're willing to wade into the general pool for your Destiny Order pick, Taigong Wang has a fairly modern skill set that's solid for multicore. You just need enough NP levels to justify using him in the first place. The one servant you absolutely should not pick is Maid Alter, who, after Constantine's upgrade, is currently a frontrunner for the worst 5-star in the game. On to casters. The showers are the most usual of suspects. Castoria, meta arts enabler and Immortal Team linchpin. No shit, right? Then there's Merlin, who's an Immortal Team enabler by virtue of his recurring charge and healing combo. He was also the main Buster support in the dark days before Koyan Light, but nowadays I see him a lot more in crit exploitation lineups. Third, Caster Scotty. Skadoodle is half of the main quick support duo and the one that's more tailored towards pure quick attackers. But if you have both flavors of Scotty, you can do things like run 3 Scotties for extra performance, or even just borrow someone else's attacker entirely. After Scotty, Miss Crane is a buffer that ejects herself off the field, saving you the trouble of swapping her out or arranging for any unfortunate accidents. She's pretty cost intensive on top of all your other engine pieces, but she can help push your damage when you can't make do otherwise. Last among my value picks is Tamama no Mae. In a vacuum, she's a reusable source of party-wide cooldown reduction. Slow as fuck, but you can hit a tipping point with her, where she stabilizes some seriously oppressive teammates like the upcoming Kate Cooker Priestess. Sounds like she should be higher up on the priority list. Well, my main reservation about recommending Tamamo is that she's a general pool servant, and using your Destiny Order pick on someone that isn't limited or story-locked feels pretty fucking bad. The growers are in a bit of a strange spot. Some of the meta supports actually scale pretty well off extra NP levels, but you also have a few attackers of note. The attack buff on Castoria's Round of Avalon gets stronger, especially going from NP1 to NP2. That and the ability to hold more than 100% charge insulates you from drain effects. Murasaki is an attacker with anti-demonic, chaotic, and good damage, and a utility package that spreads these effects to your teammates. Throw in a single stack of party-wide debuff immunity and purge resistance, and you have a pretty robust package, if you can get enough NP levels to justify running her. While you could hypothetically run her as a low NP level support, her lack of any targeted or party charge is a pretty big turnoff in my book, at least for that application. If you want to go multicore with a proper copy, great, but I don't really buy the sort of esports approach with her. Izumo no Okuni is another anti-demonic attacker, this time of the single target variety. Her combination of a 50% personal battery, target cooldown reduction, and party NP damage does give her some multicore potential. While I wouldn't headhunt her at NP0, she's worth consideration if you already have a few copies. And at this point, I'd put Merlin back into the lineup. He gains healing on subsequent NP levels, with the biggest increase coming at NP2. It might not sound like a lot, but an extra 500 healing per turn adds up over time, especially in combination with the mitigation effects of servants like Castoria. Even in the Immortal Team, hits are going to get through, and this is how you bounce back from bad RNG. Lastly, Miss Crane returns here. Much like Castoria, her NP's attack buff scales with levels, so NP2 or even NP3 are nice to give your main attacker an extra leg up. In terms of assassins, the field is pretty obvious. Koyanskaya of Light is by far the highest value pick since she's the main Buster enabler in the game right now and essential for Buster looping. In a distant second place, I'd throw first Hassan into the ring. His role as a soloist/finisher leans on his skills first and foremost, and while you'd ideally have a few levels on Azrael to speed things along, you still obtain a lot of his value at NP1. As for growers, in 2 years, Kama gets an NP upgrade that sends her damage into the stratosphere. It adds an anti-buff against charmed enemies and makes her NP's baked-in charm preemptive. So on any given turn, you have an 80% chance to gain a shitload of power, and your odds go up on the turn you activate her battery. For an idea of just how big this buff is, Kama's NP1 damage with a charm proc can contest other assassins' NP5 damage. Really, you could treat her as another Showa for this reason, though additional NP levels grow your output to an absurd degree, so fishing for extra copies will pay dividends. Tezcatlipoca is a modern AoE arts assassin with a skill set well suited for 90++ team building. Multiple party batteries, party offensive buffs, personal anti-buffs, ramping NP damage. He's got a lot of bells and whistles. Really, he just needs NP levels to keep up with enemy health values. After him, I'd give some thought to Huyan Zhuo for access to Invuln Pierce and Purge resistance, then First Asan again to get better cash out turns. Berserkers are by far the simplest category in my book. As far as value picks go, Morgan gives you the most bang going from NP0 to NP1. She's an Immortal Team Overcharge enabler and one of the main supports in Grand Berserker teams. Among the growers here, Summer Ibuki reigns supreme, and once you get enough copies of her to justify overgrailing, she acts as a generic AoE component for multi-core teams. By my count, she's currently the best servant for that role, despite what the 50 reply mellow friend is going to tell you. Lastly, we have something I alluded to earlier. Summer Musashi has a Draco-esque interaction with Saber-class servants and absolutely destroys them once she gets her NP upgrade. She's been around the longest of these servants, so there's a good chance you guys have a copy already. For my part, I take the generic potential of Ibuki over Musashi's anti-Saber niche, but if the gap between the two is big enough, you can justify the plunge. Just remember that as a servant with no batteries or party buffs, Musashi is much harder to work into multi-core teams. Rulers, Avengers, and Moon Cancers get rolled into a single slot. First of all, if you have any intention of getting CL next year, you should make Summer BB your highest priority. The two have a degenerate interaction where CL can force your hand to only have her cards. Then you lock those in with BB, giving you access to Brave Chains every turn. Typically bust your Brave Chains in combination with CL's NP, which you can loop by abusing Koyanskaya's on-hit mechanics. On top of all this, I learned recently that due to swap mechanics, you can actually plug CL out after using her hand skill, and whoever comes in has all their cards available to lock instead. It's fucking busted. Aside from that, my recommended value picks are as follows. Summer Scotty as a meta quick support, Himiko if you don't already have an Immortal Team Overcharger like Morgan, Summer BB independently of her CL interaction, Sherlock Holmes for his combo Defense Ignore and Invuln Pierce, and Tyra no Kagekyo as a solo survivalist. Then I'd go for Bunny Toria, since, after multiple upgrades, she can give your party a substantial attack buff while also manipulating your hand, though in a somewhat clumsy manner. She already has her hand manipulation effect, but the attack upgrade is due in 2 years. Lastly among the showers, Jinako is worth consideration. She's general pull, fair warning, but she can give an anti-lawful damage buff to a targeted ally, which I've definitely found myself using in the past. For growers, Arquade should be your first stop. A 100% battery is exploitable as fuck on a Buster servant, and once she gains access to Append 5, she can even do double Koyan single Oberon with Black Grail, which is one of the nastiest meat grinding setups in the game. It doesn't care about enemy comps, so you can just turn your brain off entirely. Then there's Ruler Moriarty. Next year he gets a buff that increases his NP damage and gives him a ramping component. He's an awkward servant in single core, which was one of the reasons I gave him a lukewarm assessment at the time of his initial release, but between his buffs and the game's shift to multi-core team building, he hits reasonably hard and has a notable use case of turning on other servants' anti-buffs. Their anti-evil buffs, specifically. Lastly, Karen is kind of a pain in the ass to use, but her upgraded NP and peculiar skill set lets her potentially Black Grail loop for big damage. Alter Egos, Foreigners, Pretenders, and Draco are crammed into the final slot. This one's got some tough competition. As far as showers go, Oberon is priority number 1. His 70% in combined batteries and all-or-nothing ending of Dream skill make him the ideal support to swap in and supercharge your attacker for one final noble phantasm. If you don't have a Merlin equivalent yet, Lady Avalon should be your next stop, since she fills the same function in the Immortal team, just with an arts focus. Ashia Doman's very high insta-kill chance means he comes up in places where you wouldn't necessarily expect. He's a fairly low investment way of obliterating bronze and certain higher rarity enemies, loosening your team building restrictions in specific 90++ farming nodes. Most persistently, he's the ideal attacker for the Bleached Earth QP node. And I'm telling you, you might be feeling invincible coming off Iliafest, but you're gonna run dry sooner or later. And when that happens, it's straight to Vegas with you. Either that or you could tell yourself that 40 AP doors are going to go on discount any day now. I can't remember the last time they did, so have fun with that. Van Gogh is my next recommendation. She can team up with another copy of herself to go on a critical hit and NP spamming rampage that could potentially stunlock enemies indefinitely. After that, Kukulkan. Assuming you strictly go for NP1, I'd rank her 1 below Van Gogh in terms of immediate impact, but she's no slouch either. Her massively overloaded skill set means that as long as you have stars to feed her, say from a pair of Koenskayas or her own passive, she can either spam her enhanced effects or just go to town with devastating crits. Her survivability, utility, and buff stacking make her a threat even at NP1, though she really would like to spam that Noble Phantasm. But if you're in the market for growers, then Kukulkan goes right to the top of the list. Shocker. I've had a 120 NP5 Kukulkan on JP for a while, and I can say she's an absolutely unfair servant. There was a challenge quest recently on JP, one where you fight Typhon, and it's supposed to be this beat-down drag-out brawl unless you can carefully navigate her alternating crit and Noble Phantasm resistances and fend off withering attacks. I accidentally min-turned that shit with Cuckoo. There's a recent video on the channel about that. Big crits, big NP, she does both. Next up on my list is Draco, FGO's first recruitable beast who combines the offensive properties of a Berserker with the defenses of a ruler, at least when she's fighting the 7 standard classes. Though her damage falters against non-servants and she's walled by extra classes, she makes short work of most servants and can even spam out her Noble Phantasm with just a bit of help. Notably, Draco is unavailable in GSSR banners, but not the Destiny Order, so if you're desperate to fish for her, you might want to bite the bullet here. Bazette is in 3rd place. Her counter-based gameplay takes some getting used to, and you can get screwed if your enemy decides to stick his hand down his pants instead of attacking you. But assuming that doesn't happen, it's possible for her to kill enemies during their turn, through taunts. Depending on the particular fight you're in, the usefulness of these properties can range from fun gimmick to gimmick killer. Hypothetically, Bazette can scratch itches no other servant can. Unless of course they make Galahad playable, in which case we may end up with 2. Lastly, there's Meltrelis. She's got the highest neutral NP damage of the alter egos, which means she's an effective beatstick against foreigner bosses. Are the Sakura friends gone? Hey, just use Kukulkan, trust me. So what do you think? Is there anyone I skipped that you'd go to bat for? If you say made alter, I'm gonna put a curse on you. Once the Destiny Order comes out, I'll be rolling it on stream at twitch.tv/Finotaisen. I stream every weekend at 3 p.m. Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. If you want to know what's on tap in a given week, I put the schedule up on Discord and Twitter. All links in the video's description. Till next time.